It started with a lie. A small one. Harmless, or so I thought. I'll be back by Sunday night, I told my wife, Megan, as I packed a weekend bag. It's just a reunion. Some beers, some laughs. Nothing wild. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and told me to have fun. I didn't realize then that this would be the last time she looked at me without suspicion, without hurt in her eyes. The reunion was in Dayton, the town I'd left behind 20 years ago. High school felt like another life. I hadn't seen most of those people since graduation. I almost didn't go. But then I saw her name on the RSVP list. Heather Kingsley. I hadn't thought about Heather in years. But seeing her name did something to me. Stirred something I thought was long buried. Back in high school, Heather was the girl every guy wanted but no one could have. Smart. Confident. Dangerous in that way some girls just are. She had this way of looking at you like she already knew your secrets and maybe liked you anyway. We were close once. Just friends, technically. But there were looks. Late-night phone calls. That one time after prom when we almost crossed the line, but didn't. I never told Megan about Heather. Never felt the need. Until that weekend. The reunion was at a hotel ballroom, the kind with too much lighting and watered-down cocktails. Everyone looked older, grayer, whiter. We made awkward small talk about kids, mortgages, back pain. I kept scanning the room. And then I saw her. Heather hadn't changed much. A little older, sure. But still stunning. She wore a simple black dress that clung just enough. Her eyes locked on mine from across the room, and I swear for a second it was like no time had passed. Jake Turner, she said, walking up with a grin. Still got that crooked smile. Heather Kingsley, I replied, my mouth dry. Still got that attitude. We hugged. It lasted half a second too long. The rest of the night blurred. We laughed. Danced once. Drank too much. At one point, I looked down and realized I was holding her hand under the table. No one noticed. Or if they did, no one cared. I never forgot you, she said quietly later that night, standing too close in the hotel lobby. I used to wonder what would have happened if we hadn't chickened out back then. And that's when I should have walked away. I should have gone back to my room, FaceTimed Megan, told her I missed her. I should have remembered the life I built. The house. The promises. But instead, I said the one thing that changed everything. Room 314. Come by in 10 minutes. I don't know what I expected. Guilt? Regret? What I felt instead was fire. Stupid, selfish fire. Heather showed up. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. And just like that, 20 years of what if turned into 1 hour of betrayal. When I woke up, she was gone. So was the man I thought I was? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the crumpled sheets as if they could explain what the hell just happened. The room smelled like sweat, cheap perfume, and guilt. My head was pounding, but it wasn't the whiskey. It was the weight. The crushing weight of a mistake that didn't feel like a mistake, not yet, not completely, and that scared the hell out of me. I took a long, cold shower. Stood there until the water ran lukewarm and the fog on the mirror disappeared. My reflection stared back at me like a stranger. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't the kind of man who did this. I loved my wife. I had a good life. We weren't perfect, who is? But we were solid. Or so I thought. I wanted to believe it was a one-time thing. A lapse. A fluke. A ghost from my past colliding with a weak moment. But even as I tried to frame it that way, I knew better. I hadn't just slipped. I jumped. Heather didn't text. Didn't call. She didn't need to. The silence between us was louder than anything she could have said. And that silence followed me all the way home. Megan greeted me at the door with a smile. That killed me. She was wearing my favorite sweatshirt, the old Ohio State one with the frayed sleeves, and her hair was in that messy bun she always wore when she was relaxed, when she felt safe. She leaned in to kiss me and I hesitated for just a second. Just enough for her to notice. What's wrong? She asked, frowning. You look off. Just tired, I muttered. It was a long drive. She nodded and didn't press. Megan never pressed. That was part of the problem. She trusted me too much. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal. I mowed the lawn, watched TV, made dinner one night just to feel useful. But everything felt hollow. Her laugh grated on me. Her touch made me flinch. I hated myself for it. And then, as if the universe wasn't done punishing me, Heather sent a message. Short, simple, direct. Still thinking about you. You. I stared at it for an hour. I could have ignored it. I should have. But instead, I typed out one word that sealed my fate. Yes. That's how it started. Again. Texts. Late-night calls. Inside jokes that made me feel 17 again. We told ourselves it was harmless. We were just talking. Just reconnecting. But lies are like termites. They start small, invisible. By the time you see the damage, the foundation is already rotting. Megan noticed I was distant. She asked if everything was okay. I lied. Again and again. I became good at it. Too good. And that terrified me. The worst part? A part of me was alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I was ashamed of it, but I couldn't deny it. I felt seen, wanted, excited. And that's when I realized something that chilled me to my core. This wasn't just about sex. It was about something deeper. Something broken in me that I hadn't even known was there. And Heather? She wasn't just part of my past anymore. She was becoming my escape. The affair didn't explode into my life, it seeped in. Quiet. Steady. Poisonous. Like smoke through a crack in the window, curling into every corner before you even notice you're choking. At first, it was just messages. Then phone calls. Then we started meeting again. Not in our hometown, not where anyone might recognize us. We found places in between, quiet hotels off the highway, restaurants where no one knew our names. Each meeting blurred the lines a little more. Each time, I promised myself it would be the last. Each time, I broke the promise faster than the last. Megan started withdrawing, sensing something she couldn't name. She didn't accuse. That would have been easier, in a way. I could have denied, deflected, fought. But she just became quieter. More careful. She watched me like she didn't know me anymore. And maybe she didn't. One night, she reached for me in bed. Her hand grazed my chest like it used to, soft, familiar, and I froze. She felt it. Pulled back like I burned her. We didn't speak. She turned her back to me and I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, knowing full well one of them was me. I started having dreams, vivid, punishing ones. In them, Megan found out. Sometimes she screamed. Sometimes she cried. But the worst ones were when she said nothing at all. Just looked at me, hollow-eyed, like something in her had died. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, and lie there wondering how much time I had left before the dream became real. I told myself I was in control. That I could stop any time. But the truth was I didn't want to. With Heather, I felt important again. Not just seen chosen. She made me feel like a man, not just a husband, a provider, a fixture in someone else's routine. We talked about the past a lot. What we missed out on. What we might have had. And slowly, those conversations turned into fantasies. What if we had met again under different circumstances? What if I wasn't married? What if we were meant to be? I started thinking about leaving. Not out loud. Not yet. But the idea took root. I pictured telling Megan the truth, packing a bag, starting over. Heather didn't push, not directly, but she didn't discourage the thought either. Sometimes she'd say things like, "It doesn't have to be this way, you know." Or, "You deserve to be happy, Jake." And God help me, I believed her. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. I thought I was running the show, that I was the one keeping the secrets. But Heather had secrets of her own, secrets that would unravel everything faster than I ever imagined. It started with a phone call in the middle of the night. Megan was asleep. I slipped out of bed and answered it in the bathroom with the door locked. "Jake," Heather said, her voice shaking. "Something's happened." That's when everything started to spiral. Heather's voice was different that night. Not seductive, not playful, but raw, unguarded. I'd never heard her like that. It snapped something inside me. I shut the bathroom door tighter and whispered, "What happened?" She hesitated. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. "Jake, someone saw us." My stomach dropped. The blood rushed to my ears and the room spun for a second. "Who?" "I don't know." "At the motel. I think someone followed me back to my car. They were taking pictures." I didn't see their face. Panic surged through me like a flash flood. Pictures. Proof. Exposure. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I closed my eyes and gripped the sink, trying to stay calm. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew she wouldn't call me like this unless she was. "Yes." "I'm sorry, Jake. I should have been more careful." But her voice cracked. "What if they send them to your wife?" I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Megan, wide-eyed, every creak of the house sounding like a knock on the door. I imagined my world burning down, Megan's face when she saw the photos, my family turning on me, my friends finding out. Not just the affair, but the lie of who I had become. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about leaving anymore. I was thinking about survival. Over the next few days, I was on edge constantly. I checked my email obsessively. Watched Megan's every move like she was a landmine about to go off. I expected confrontation, but it never came. Instead, something worse happened. Megan started being kind. She brought me coffee in bed one morning. Told me she missed me. Said I seemed far away lately. and she wanted to fix things. I nodded, smiled, pretended. Inside, I was crumbling. I began pulling away from Heather, not because I stopped wanting her, but because I realized the gravity of what I stood to lose. I told her we needed to stop, that things were getting too complicated. She didn't scream, didn't beg. She just went quiet, and that silence scared me more than anything. A week later, Megan found the message. I'd been careless. A text. One I forgot to delete. Just 4 words. I miss you too. I came home to her sitting at the kitchen table, phone in her hand, face like stone. Who is she? There was no rage, no theatrics, just that one question, cold and sharp like a scalpel. My mouth opened, closed. I tried to speak, to explain, but there was no explanation that wouldn't make me look smaller, weaker, crueler than I already did. I'm sorry, I finally whispered. It was all I could say. She stood slowly, like every movement cost her something. I trusted you, she said. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. You were my whole world, Jake. And then she walked past me, out of the kitchen, out of the room, and I wasn't sure if she'd ever come back. The days that followed were unbearable. Megan didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't even ask me to leave. That would have been easier, a fight, some finality. But instead, she created distance in the cruelest way possible. Silence. She moved through the house like a ghost. She still made coffee in the morning, still folded laundry, still fed the dog. But she didn't look at me, didn't speak unless she had to. Her presence was colder than any words she could have thrown at me. It was like living with a stranger who used to be your home. I tried apologizing, over and over. I told her it didn't mean anything. A lie, of course, but one I hoped might cushion the damage. She didn't react. Not once. Just walked away, as if every syllable I spoke was another nail in the coffin she was already building for our marriage. I stopped texting Heather. Blocked her number. It didn't matter. The damage was done. But still, part of me wanted to hear from her, wanted her to explain, to take some of the blame, to make me feel like I hadn't been the only villain in this story. But Heather was silent, too. I started sleeping on the couch. Not because Megan asked. She never said a word. But because I couldn't stomach lying beside her anymore. Not with her body curled away from me like I was something dirty. Not with the weight of her disappointment pressing down on my chest like a brick. One night, I heard her crying in the shower. Quiet sobs, muffled by the sound of water. I sat outside the bathroom door, my forehead against the wood, hating myself more than I thought possible. She was breaking, and I had done this. With my choices, my selfishness, my lies. I kept waiting for her to leave, but she didn't. Instead, she started changing. She stopped cooking dinner, stopped texting me during the day. She came home later and later, sometimes not until midnight. She bought new clothes, started wearing makeup again, going to the gym. It was like she was shedding the life we had, piece by piece, right in front of me. One night, she came home in a short black dress, one I'd never seen before, and I couldn't help myself. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked at me, expressionless. "Out." "With who?" A long pause. Then she smiled. Just a little. "Does it matter?" That smile gutted me. It was the same one I'd worn the first night I met Heather again. The same one that said, "I know what I'm doing, and I don't care if it hurts you." I wanted to ask if she was seeing someone, but I couldn't, because I knew deep down that I had no right to ask. I had opened this door, and now she was walking through it, not to hurt me, but to reclaim something I had stolen. The not knowing was the worst part. I could have handled anger, even hatred, but this quiet unraveling, this slow, meticulous erasure of everything we had, was torture. Megan didn't slam doors. She didn't scream at me in the middle of the night. Instead, she simply began to live a life I wasn't part of anymore. One morning I woke up and realized I didn't even know her schedule. I didn't know where she went during the day, who she talked to, what she was thinking. And that was when it hit me. I hadn't just betrayed her. I had lost her. She still hadn't kicked me out, and I still hadn't left. We were both stuck in this strange limbo, two ghosts haunting the same space. I kept waiting for her to demand a divorce. But she didn't. Maybe she wanted me to be the one to end it. To be the coward to the very end. One evening, about a month after she found the message, I came home to find her in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine. She looked calm. Too calm. "We need to talk," she said, her voice even. I nodded, heart hammering. "Okay." She didn't sit. Just stood across from me, her fingers wrapped loosely around the stem of her glass. "I know everything," she said. My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" She took a slow sip, then locked eyes with me. "I hired someone." Silence. "I couldn't live in the dark anymore," she continued. "So I hired a private investigator. I know about the motel. I know about the dates in Cincinnati. I know about Heather. And I know it didn't stop after the reunion. The air left my lungs. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All this time I thought I was hiding it so well. I thought I had some control left. But she had known, truly known for weeks. And she had said nothing. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, almost whispering. "Because I wanted to see who you really were," she said, not a hint of emotion in her voice. "Whether you'd confess. Whether you'd try to fix it. Or whether you'd just keep lying." I lowered my eyes. I couldn't even look at her. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "I know," she said. "But that doesn't change anything." Then she finally sat down. Her posture still, composed. "I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to make this messy. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I want this handled with dignity. We'll split the assets. No fighting over the house. You can keep the car. But I want one thing clear, eh?" She leaned in slightly, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You don't get to cry about this. You don't get to fall apart now. You made your choices. You decided she was worth more than me. So own that." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. Not in front of her. Not after everything I'd done. "Do you love her?" she asked suddenly. I hesitated. "No," I said. And I meant it. She nodded slowly. "That's the part that hurts the most. That you destroyed us for something you didn't even believe in." She stood, finished her wine, and walked upstairs. I stayed in that kitchen for hours, long after the lights were off and the house was silent. For the first time, I truly understood what it meant to lose something you could never get back. The divorce moved forward with quiet efficiency. Megan wasn't bluffing. She had everything planned out, every document ready, every clause reviewed. It was as if she had been mourning the marriage long before I knew it was dead. I signed the papers with a hand that barely stopped shaking. There was no courtroom drama, no shouting matches over assets or who got what. She just wanted to be done. And that, more than anything, made it real. I wasn't worth the fight. I moved out 2 weeks later into a small apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Beige walls. 1 bedroom. A cheap futon that creaked when I sat on it. I filled the fridge with frozen meals and cheap beer and tried to pretend this was a fresh start, but it didn't feel like one. It felt like exile. Like I'd been banished from the life I built with my own hands. Heather texted a few times. I ignored her at first. Then, after a few nights staring at the ceiling in silence, I answered. She asked how I was. I lied and said I was fine. She offered to come over. I told her not yet. The truth was, every time I saw her name light up my screen, it made me sick. Not because of her, but because of what she represented. A life I thought I wanted. A thrill I thought I needed. And now, the wreckage it left behind. One night, I gave in and met her for coffee. She looked different. Maybe it was me, maybe I was seeing her through new eyes. She was still beautiful. Still sharp. But the illusion had cracked. She wasn't the escape anymore. She was a reminder. We talked for half an hour, mostly about nothing. She smiled a lot, touched my hand once. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in either. Eventually, she asked, "Do you regret it?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. Yes. That one word landed heavy between us. She nodded, tried to smile, but her eyes flickered with something else, disappointment maybe. Or recognition. That we were never really about love. We were about timing. Weakness. Fantasy. When we parted, I didn't hug her. I haven't seen her since. The days blended together after that. Work became routine. I avoided friends. I didn't go back to our old favorite spots. Everything reminded me of Megan. Of the version of me that existed when she still believed in who I was. I didn't realize how much of myself was built in her reflection until it shattered. I tried to keep busy. Gym. Work. A few dates, none of which went past dinner. They all felt empty. I wasn't ready, maybe I never would be. Because no matter how far I tried to run from it, I kept coming back to the same truth. I had thrown away the best thing I ever had. And for what? For something I couldn't even name. I didn't expect forgiveness. Not from Megan. Not from anyone. But but I still found myself hoping for something. A crack in the wall, a moment of grace. I guess that's the irony of betrayal. You commit it thinking you're choosing freedom, and then you spend every day afterward trapped in the prison you built for yourself. 6 months passed. I didn't reach out to Megan. Not because I didn't want to. God knows I wanted to hear her voice, see her smile, ask if she was okay. But because I knew it would be selfish. She deserved distance. Peace. I had taken enough from her already. Then one afternoon, I ran into her. It was at a grocery store of all places. I turned a corner near the produce aisle, and there she was, standing beside a cart, comparing avocados like it was any other day in the world. But to me, it was like the breath got knocked out of my chest. She looked happy. Not euphoric, not glowing like in some cliché movie, but calm, peaceful. And somehow that cut deeper than anything, because it meant she had healed or was healing without me. She noticed me, and for a second we both froze. Then she gave a small nod. Polite, cool. Nothing in her eyes said she missed me. Nothing in her face said she still hurt. She might as well have been looking at an old coworker or someone she passed in the hallway years ago. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. Hey, I said. Hi, she replied, her tone light but guarded. There was a pause, one I didn't know how to fill. I wanted to say everything. Apologize again. Ask how she was. Tell her she looked beautiful. But instead, I just stood there, paralyzed by my own guilt. She broke the silence first. I hope you're doing okay, she said. Not with bitterness. Not with sarcasm. Just kindness. It was the final blow. I nodded. You too. And just like that, she walked away. I stood in that aisle for a long time, staring at the avocados like they held answers I couldn't find anywhere else. Then I left without buying anything. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about who I'd become. Not just the cheater, not just the liar, but the man who let go of something good, no, something extraordinary because he was chasing a feeling. A moment. A high. I thought betrayal would feel like freedom, but it doesn't. It feels like walking out into the world naked and realizing too late that nothing out there can keep you warm like what you left behind. And in the silence of that evening, I started writing. Not to Megan, not to Heather, but to myself. A letter of truth. Because before I could ever ask for someone else's forgiveness, I needed to face the man I'd become and decide whether I still wanted to be him. The letter turned into pages. For then 6, then 10. I wrote until my hand cramped, pouring out every lie, every moment of weakness, every excuse I'd clung to. I wrote the truth the way I should have said it when it mattered. I admitted I was a coward, that I had wanted to feel alive again, not realizing I was already alive. I was just too numb to see it. I admitted I'd mistaken comfort for stagnation, and in my selfishness, I shattered something irreplaceable. I didn't write with the hope of redemption. This wasn't a letter to win Megan back. It wasn't a plea. It was a confession, a reckoning. I needed to put it on paper to believe it myself. Because some sins are so heavy, they don't live in your memory. They live in your bones. I folded the pages, slid them into an envelope, and placed them in a drawer. I never mailed them. I didn't need to. Saying the words had already done something irreversible inside me. I started therapy. First, it felt useless. I sat in a room with a stranger and described the worst version of myself, waiting to be judged. But he didn't judge me. He just listened. And little by little, I began to unpack the choices that led me here. The patterns, the insecurities, the deep, aching hunger to be seen, not for what I provided, but for who I was. I realized I had never truly let Megan in. Not completely. I loved her, but I kept parts of myself guarded, out of fear, out of pride. And when Heather came back into my life, she didn't break through those walls. She walked through a door I'd left unlocked. That truth crushed me, because for the first time, I saw my infidelity not as a moment of passion, but as a symptom of a much deeper wound. One I had never been brave enough to face. Months passed. Seasons changed. I began to feel different. Not better. Not fixed. Just honest. I started showing up more in life. For myself. For the people I hadn't pushed away. I volunteered at a community center. Picked up running again. Talked to my brother, who I hadn't called in over a year. These weren't grand gestures. Just small attempts to live with intention. To stop hiding. I still thought about Megan often. Not with longing, but with respect. Gratitude. She had every right to destroy me, and instead she chose dignity. That taught me more about love than anything else she'd ever said or done. One rainy afternoon, I found myself driving past our old house. The windows were different, new curtains, a new porch light, but the garden still looked like hers. Neat. Purposeful. Alive. I didn't stop. Just drove slowly, taking in the life she'd rebuilt without me. And I felt peace. Not because I'd moved on, but because I finally understood what it meant to let go. A year after the reunion, almost to the day, I sat on a park bench with a coffee in one hand and nothing in the other. That emptiness felt fitting. I watched people walk by, couples, friends, strangers on their phones, a man playing fetch with a golden retriever. Life moved around me, indifferent to my regrets. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning in guilt. I felt grounded in it. It wasn't a weight anymore, it was a part of me. A scar. A reminder. I had thought betrayal was a singular act, a sharp rupture in a relationship. But it's not. It's a slow unraveling, 1,000 missed moments, unspoken truths, compromises we make with our own integrity. And it doesn't just destroy the person we betray. It destroys the version of ourselves we once believed we were. I still don't know if Megan ever truly forgave me. We never had a final conversation. No closure, no late-night meeting where we dissected what went wrong. Maybe that's what made the end so permanent. Some stories don't need an epilogue. They need silence. Sometimes I imagine what I'd say if I ever did see her again, really see her. Not in a grocery store, not in passing, but across a table, eye to eye. I'd tell her that I think about the way she used to hum when she cooked, how she always left the porch light on when I worked late, how she believed in me when I didn't deserve it. I'd tell her that I wish I had known the value of those things before I lost them. That I was wrong, deeply, undeniably wrong, and not just for the affair, but for taking her for granted. But more than anything, I'd tell her thank you. Thank you for loving me in a way I didn't understand until it was gone. Thank you for walking away with dignity when you could have burned the world down. And thank you for showing me that real strength isn't in staying through betrayal, it's in knowing when to let go. I'm not a hero in this story. Not even close. I'm the man who made the mistake. Who let desire outweigh loyalty. Who confused validation for love. But I'm also the man who lived through the wreckage. Who faced the mirror. Who stayed when the excuses ran out. Sometimes we don't get redemption. Sometimes we just get a chance to change. And maybe that's enough. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The greatest betrayal isn't cheating on the one you love. It's abandoning the person you promised to be.